Men spend years building themselves into something impressive. They carve muscle onto bone, stack achievements like bricks, and adjust their posture until it looks like nothing can touch them. From the outside, it appears like confidence. But inside, there's a tremor, a quiet fear of being truly seen. Because what if everything they worked so hard to display isn't strength but camouflage? The world praises the man who never falters, never hesitates, never shows softness. So he learns to become a performance of certainty, a polished armor, a well-lit version of himself. But armor, even the strongest kind, is lonely to live inside. The camera lingers on this contradiction. A man who looks like he has mastered himself, yet flinches when someone tries to get close. A man admired by many, but understood by almost none. Maybe the greatest paradox is this: the more high value a man tries to become, the further he drifts from the one thing he craves, connection. So the question hangs in the air like a faint echo. What if the traits we call strong are actually the shields men build to hide their deepest insecurity? What fear are they really running from? On the surface, the story seems straightforward. Men chase high-value traits because they want to avoid rejection. They want to maintain standards, signal discipline, and prove they are men worth choosing. In a culture that rewards achievement more loudly than authenticity, this logic feels almost noble. Strength, productivity, stoicism, these are framed as virtues, the marks of someone who has mastered life, rather than someone afraid of being left behind. But beneath the admiration lies an illusion so common it feels invisible. Gym grind culture tells men that if they build their bodies hard enough, no one will ever notice the parts of them that feel soft. Productivity culture whispers that if they stay busy enough, they won't have to sit alone with their own thoughts. The modern Stoic branding teaches them that fewer emotions mean more power, even if the silence inside becomes suffocating. These behaviors are not failures. They are strategies. They are the outward expressions of a quiet fear. That value is something you must earn through performance, not something you inherently carry. The world praises the man who is always improving, the early riser, the disciplined lifter, the cold, calculated achiever. And so men follow the script, polishing themselves like projects. They promise they are working on becoming better, but often what they're really working on is becoming less rejectable. They think if they are strong enough, successful enough, unshakable enough, they will finally deserve the love, attention, or safety they fear they never naturally possessed. This is the illusion that being high value is a shield against judgment, when in truth, it is often an elegant disguise for the belief that without all this effort, they wouldn't be enough. Behind the polished persona lies a far older story, one that usually begins long before the first self-help book, the first gym membership, or the first attempt at becoming high value. Developmental psychology makes this clear. Children don't just receive affection, they learn the terms on which affection arrives. When a boy is praised only for being strong, helpful, or high-achieving, his nervous system quietly absorbs a rule he never agreed to. Love must be earned. Terence Real's work on relational male trauma describes this as the early fracture, where boys begin to hide tender parts of themselves, trading openness for usefulness. Brené Brown notes that shame in men often forms around one core message: do not be weak. So the child adapts. He tightens. He performs. He becomes competent because competence brings connection. He becomes stoic because vulnerability brings distance. Over time, he builds a template for love that feels safe only when he is in control, admired, or needed. The cost of this adaptation is subtle but profound. He stops believing he can be loved simply for existing. Attachment theory shows how this becomes a lifelong rhythm. Those with anxious histories try to earn closeness through achievement. Those with avoidant wounds hide behind emotional neutrality, fearing that if someone sees their real fears or insecurities, they will be dismissed. Both patterns lead to the same belief: if someone truly knows me, they will leave. This is why the high-value persona often glitters with strength, yet trembles underneath. The man who never shows emotion is not always confident. He is avoiding the exposure that once felt dangerous. The man obsessed with leveling up is not always ambitious. He is terrified that stillness will reveal inadequacy. The man who controls his image with military precision is often the one who cannot imagine being loved without it. The fear is not rejection itself. Rejection is familiar, almost expected. The deeper fear is being known. Being known means letting someone see him without the trophies, without the armor, without the perfect posture of success. It means risking that the softness he hid as a boy might still be there. And if someone sees that softness and walks away, it confirms the very belief he has spent a lifetime outrunning. So he keeps perfecting the persona, not to impress the world, but to protect the child who learned long ago that unconditional love was never guaranteed. In the modern world, the high-value persona doesn't just survive, it thrives. Social media has turned identity into a marketplace where value is measured in metrics: followers, aesthetics, routines, and curated discipline. The man who fears being unworthy finds endless tools to keep building his armor. He optimizes his mornings, tracks his sleep, counts his macros, and posts his progress because the culture around him applauds the performance. Yet beneath the applause sits a quiet exhaustion he rarely admits. He can't stop, because stopping feels like disappearing. Modern masculinity has become a brand. You see it in influencer culture, where men are taught to treat themselves like products, sharpened, polished, and sold through stoic quotes and lifestyle reels. The gym becomes not a place to feel alive, but a stage to demonstrate worth. Productivity turns into a moral code. Even self-care is marketed not as rest, but as an edge. The persona grows stronger, but the person underneath grows thinner. Dating amplifies the same pressure. Many men move through relationships like strategists, following rules rather than emotions. Don't text first. Maintain frame. Show no need. Intimacy becomes a negotiation, vulnerability a liability. Apps reduce connection to numbers, swipes, matches, responses, creating an environment where being chosen feels like a scoreboard rather than a moment of truth. The fear of being seen fuels a dependence on presentation. Polished profiles, calculated replies, curated confidence, and all the while, the gap widens. The version of him that lives online glows with discipline and certainty. The version of him that lives offline often feels breathless, tense, and alone. He becomes a man who knows how to perform presence without ever truly offering it. The culture rewards the persona. The algorithm reinforces it. Peers admire it. But the cost is subtle and corrosive. The more he invests in being impressive, the less he practices being real. What modern life hides is the simplest truth. Beneath every perfected routine and every polished image is a man terrified that if he stops performing for even a moment, the world, or those closest to him, will see the very thing he's trying to outrun. The persona is celebrated, but the person is starving. 5. Healing begins slowly, almost imperceptibly, the moment a man decides to stop earning his worth and starts experiencing himself instead. The emotional purpose here is not triumph, but soft permission. The relief of realizing he no longer has to perform to be loved. The shift is subtle. Instead of optimizing his emotions, he begins learning to name them. Instead of controlling every response, he practices being present, even if that presence feels unsteady. This is not self-improvement. This is self-return. Research on self-compassion, especially Kristin Neff's work, shows that healing is not achieved through discipline, but through gentleness. When a man learns to speak to himself the way he speaks to those he protects, the armor begins to loosen. He discovers that vulnerability isn't the opposite of strength. It is strength without the performance. Emotional literacy becomes an act of courage, saying, "I'm tired, I'm scared, I don't know," without fear of collapse. This is the beginning of integration. Healing shows itself in small, unglamorous moments. A man sits with discomfort, rather than numbing it with productivity. He tells a partner what he truly feels, instead of choreographing a persona. He lets himself rest without apologizing for it. He stops evaluating his value through metrics, mirrors, and achievements. He realizes that connection happens only when he allows himself to be seen, not polished, not curated, but real. The focus is not on abandoning ambition or strength. It is on disentangling them from the fear of not being enough. He learns that presence is more disarming than perfection. That relationships deepen not through status, but through sincerity. This is integration, bringing strength and softness into the same room, allowing them to coexist without conflict. The high-value persona begins to dissolve not because he rejects it, but because he no longer needs it. And in its place emerges something far more grounded. A man who can offer connection instead of performance, truth instead of strategy, and presence instead of pretense. The story returns to its opening paradox. The men who seem the strongest are often the ones who finally become brave enough to remove the armor they spent years perfecting. The emotional tension that shaped the narrative now softens, settling into a quiet understanding that true strength is not force, nor image, nor mastery, but the courage to be known. The tone slows into something gentle and contemplative, letting each idea breathe. When fear loosens its grip, value no longer needs to be constructed. It simply comes forward, the way light emerges when a heavy curtain is finally pulled aside. The man who once lived through performance now sits in stillness without needing to be impressive. The world does not shrink. It becomes clearer. The last image is simple and unadorned, a man resting in a room that no longer echoes with the clatter of self-defense. No posing, no proving, just presence. This quiet scene carries the final truth of the script. Love was never something to earn. It was something that waited patiently for the moment he stopped hiding.